What is going on, everyone? It is College Football Talk. I am your host, Hunter DeLauder, and today is Week 10 recap, where we're going to be going over all the biggest action from this past week. There was a lot that went down. A lot of ranked teams went down. We're going to get into all of it. Some top 5 teams struggled, even lost, looking at Penn State. And so it's going to get all talked about today. So make sure you guys are subscribing to the podcast. It is essential that you guys are subscribing. We are on the road to 200 subscribers. We just picked up a couple from this past episode, so it's awesome to see. So make sure you guys continue to subscribe if you're new around here. If you know anybody that's a college football fan, tell them to subscribe. It's nothing free. It's free. There's no charge added on. It just helps continue to grow the podcast and grow this channel. And if you are a reoccurring guest, welcome back. Make sure you guys subscribe and hit that like button and share the video as well. You can find me on the social media platform on Instagram at hunter.delauder83 and then on Twitter/X at delauderhunter. So love to interact with you guys, and if you guys just want to give me a follow, it'd be awesome as well. So without further ado, we're going to get right into it because we had a lot to talk about today. Killed the music. We're going to start in Happy Valley, where number 4, Ohio State, walked in on a noon kickoff. It was a beautiful day, but the game should have never been a noon kickoff, but it was. And so Ohio State goes into Happy Valley, Beaver Stadium place. It was a record crowd, if I remember correctly, and take down Penn State. Give me 1 second here. Forgot to add the very important number 3. There we go. They beat number 3 Penn State again, 20-13. It was a dream start for Penn State. They go up 10-0 out of the gate. Field goal down the field for the offense. And then on the first drive, Ohio State, Will Howard throws a pick 6 to Zion Tracy. It was just read the route beautifully and picked it off. Took it the other way. And Penn State was up 10-0. But from that moment on, it was all Buckeyes. Penn State only mustered 3 points the remainder of the game. It was the red zone miscues that were the ultimate killer for them. They had first and goal from inside the 5 at the end of the second quarter, and Drew Aller threw a pick, which was originally ruled incomplete, but then they looked at it, and it turns out Ohio State defensive back had possession of the ball. He ripped it out of the hands of Wallace, ripped it out of his hands, had possession, and kept his feet inbounds before going out. So they overruled it, and it became a touchback, and Ohio State took over. And even after Ohio State had a miscue in the red zone with Will Howard fumbling the ball, it didn't matter because then at the end of the game, it's 20-13 with about 6 minutes left in the game. Penn State has the ball inside the 5 again, first and goal after a huge play by Tyler Warren. And they stall. They run 3 straight times up the middle, don't get anything. Then they try to do some winky-dink play action pass. Ohio State never falls for it, and they turn the ball over on downs. Defense, which had played really well Saturday. Abdul Carter had a really nice day off the edge. He had a couple sacks. I mean, they played really well, but unfortunately, the defense just could not get a stop when it needed to at the end of the game, where Ohio State took over after forcing a turnover on downs, and then presumably went on a 5-minute drive to close out the game. Will Howard's legs were huge down the stretch in that game, where he had a couple late scrambles that ended up moving the chains, even icing it at the end. Ohio State ran the ball a lot better. They ran the ball terribly last week, 64 yards total rushing against Nebraska. They turned it around to this week. They had 179 yards on the ground. It was Quinshon Judkins who led the way in that category with 95 yards rushing on 14 carries. Trevion Henderson had 10 carries for 54 yards. So they both were really balanced. The offense looked a lot better. Like I said, Will Howard's legs were really big. He didn't have the greatest day throwing the football. I mean, he still had 2 touchdowns. He had a really nice touchdown pass to Emeka Egbuka in that first quarter. About 182 yards, had the 1 pick. But I think it was his legs, like I said, that was really the difference maker. And then the defense played lights out. They held Penn State to 270 yards of total offense. It was complete shutdown. I mean, Penn State was able to have some success early running the football. I thought Drew Aller's legs were really big in that first half, but then all of a sudden, like, Ohio State just shut that down abruptly to an end in the second half. Like, you didn't see any of Aller's legs being a factor at all. And honestly, it was a slower pace, slower moving game that didn't have a whole lot of action, a lot of field goals being made. But it's just a credit to Ohio State getting a big time win on the road, where they have owned Penn State since they last lost them in 2016. James Franklin is now 1-10 against Ohio State. It's not anything. It's just not good. I think Penn State fans will tell you that. I think Penn State fans, some of them will say that they've had enough of it. But it's hard to move off a guy because he's had success outside of Ohio State and Michigan. James Franklin and Penn State have had great success in the Big Ten. They've won a couple of Big Ten titles. They've gone to the Rose Bowl a few times. They even won them. But they just can't get over this hump, which is Ohio State. And, I don't know. You can't move off of him, in my opinion, because who else are you going to go to that's better than Franklin right now? That's be the biggest thing. And you bring in Andy Kotelnicki from Kansas to be the OC, and to promote games like this. And Penn State just wasn't efficient enough. They weren't able to do anything right offensively. And that's it's a little bit goes with everything as a whole. I just don't know how you were able to get out in front so early and then just not be able to do anything. I think the lack of getting your best playmakers involved too was a big issue. Tyler Warren had no looks in that red zone at the end of the game right there. He got them down there, and then he never saw the ball again. That can't happen. Tyler Warren's your best offensive player. He needs to get the ball. I just don't know. You're in the biggest game of the year. You're not getting your best playmakers involved. That's just not how it's going to work out. You're never going to win a game like that. And then shifting back to Ohio State, I just think it was a must-win game for them as far as staying in the Big Ten title race. They had two big tests this season. It was at Oregon and at Penn State for the most part. And you got Indiana in a couple weeks, which is going to be a big test. But these two big road tests were it. They failed the first one, and it looked like at the start of this one, it was bad news again. They were able to rally, slow the game down, get some turnovers, make some big stops, and play a classic Ohio State football game in the Big Ten. And just credit to Ryan Day and that entire staff. Chip Kelly had a really good game play calling wise, and we'll see how far now the Buckeyes can kind of keep rolling here. They have a huge game coming up in a few weeks with Indiana at home, and then you have the Michigan game. So job's not done yet, but they definitely helped themselves out a lot in the Big Ten title race, and we'll see where they go from there. But big time win for Ohio State and another poor effort from Penn State. I thought they were going to win this one, but it just wasn't meant to be. All right, shifting now to, after I get a drink here, the sweet souvenir cup. Got this in a great deal. Shout out to Sanford Stadium and the hot dog concession stands meal for the souvenir cup. $13, 2 hot dogs and a souvenir cup. I mean, you can't get any better than that. So we have some chocolate milk in there tonight. It's that kind of night here on this Monday night. We're going to shift to, speaking of Sanford Stadium, home of the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia Bulldogs were not playing there this weekend. They were playing in Jacksonville at Everbank Stadium, taking on the Florida Gators. It was the annual world's largest outdoor cocktail party rivalry game. The Dogs came into this one winning 6 of 7. They were looking for their 4th straight win and looking to complete the quadrifecta, I guess you would like to call it, as far as the seniors going. They had looking for the first time that Georgia's seniors were trying to be the first class since 1983 to sweep the Gators. Vice versa, Florida was looking to avoid their first sweep as a senior class since that 1983 senior group. Anyway, so Georgia, if you're Florida, unfortunately lost the game. Georgia pulls ahead late to beat the Gators 34-20. It was a tale of two halves. I was at the game. I have video evidence right here. You can tell, really nice seats. This was right here at the beginning of the game. If you've never been to this game, hold on. All right, perfect. So, if you've never been to this game, I would highly suggest going. is it's a really great environment. It's split down the middle. I'd say there's more Georgia fans there, but it's still, to the naked eye, it looks like it's split right down the middle. So if you ever get a chance to go, I would go. That was my third straight year going. I had never been prior to the previous 3 times, but it's always a great spectacle. And this was really the first year that it's been competitive since I've been there. And like I said, it was a tale of 2 halves. The first half, it was all Gators. You have forced 2 turnovers. I said coming into the preview, go back and watch if you haven't. The biggest keys for Florida as a 17, it was about a 15, 16 point underdog. You need to play from ahead, or play ahead, build a lead, stay ahead, because they have been times where they've taken the lead in prior games, but they haven't been able to stay in any lead and then immediately just fall behind the wayside and get passed up like nothing. So they need to stay ahead here, play from ahead, not fall behind, and also force turnovers, because Carson Beck came into this one turning the football over a lot. He came into this game with 15 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. So he was turning the ball over a lot, and they got him to force. They forced another 2 turnovers in the first half. DJ Lagway on the second turnover. First play is a play action pass. Gets Malachi Starks to come in, and he takes the bait. Aiden Mizell gets over the top. It's a big-time touchdown pass. Gators are up, I believe it was 10-3 at that point, and so it's all Florida. It just feels like the momentum is riding on that side. And then all of a sudden, 5:01 to go in the second quarter, DJ Lagway gets hurt. It's a hamstring injury. It's a non-contact play. The cart had to come out. The whole team came out to greet him. And so it was just a big blow to Florida, which felt like they were in control to that point. But after that, it just felt like Georgia was able to kind of maybe settle things down some and then just start playing Georgia football. Georgia ended up cutting the lead to 4 right before the half. And then Florida, who was content with just going into the half with the lead, ends up running a few plays on the ground, and they start getting some big plays. And all of a sudden, they're looking at getting a field goal, and they ended up getting a field goal and a long Trace Mack field goal. So they go up 13-6 at halftime. And if you're a Georgia fan, you're like, come on, like they're okay with going to the half up 4, and you're just going to let them get free points like that. That's like, it can't happen, cannot happen. And I thought there was a lot of times like that Georgia defense, which played really well, I thought for the most part. I mean, even the big touchdown pass, I mean, Florida got away with the hold and possibly an illegal hands to the face on that play on Warren Brinson. If Malachi Starks doesn't take the bait and just stays back because it's cover 2 and not play the run because there's 8-9 guys in front of him, if he just stays back there with KJ Bolden, I mean, that's not a touchdown right there. That's not going to happen. And other than that, like, I thought they played really well, but there were times where it's like, what are we doing? But then second half comes, Beck immediately throws a pick. That one's not really on him because there was pressure. He got hit as he threw the ball up, and I just knew watching it that it was going to get picked off, and it did. Jack Pyburn got it. But Georgia was able to hold on defense, and then Georgia immediately got the ball back, went on an 8-play, 83-yard touchdown drive, Nate Frazier capping it off. And then Florida has the botched field goal error on the fumble. It was a bad snap. It was right underneath, I believe it was Crawshaw's hands, who is the holder. Goes all the way back to like the Florida 36 or so. Georgia takes over, immediately scores right after 3 plays later to Cash Jones. They take the lead. But then it's Florida's defense, which was able to stand tall, which I thought they played great all night long for the most part. For the situation that they were in, I thought they played really well. And they were able to hold Georgia to a couple 3-and-outs late in the start of that fourth quarter, which was able to give them life still. Because for the most part, like the back half, the second half, it felt like the game was just like there was no energy coming from Florida. And you're looking at the scoreboard, and it's still only a 7-point game. Like, I was saying to some people, like, Florida's still in this game, but they feel dead. And that's the weird part. Like, this game is not over, but it feels like it's over. And to Florida's credit, they were able to muster up a drive, get right down the field, and they scored to tie it. But unfortunately, the defense just couldn't hold on their end as Georgia went right down the field, really highlighted by a massive third down. And I believe it was a 3rd down and 5. And Arian Smith, who came up clutch 2 weeks ago in the Texas game on a late 3rd down, came up clutch again. Because if you don't get that, Florida's going to get the ball right back in a really good field position, and who knows what happens. So Georgia was able to capitalize on the 3rd down right there, and then they kind of got the drive rolling, which ended up being on a big touchdown, a 7-play drive, a 7-play 75-yard drive, capped off with a, believe it was Dominic Lovett touchdown. And then there was interception. Aiden Warner threw a pick to C.J. Allen. C.J. Allen made a really nice play on it, as that might have been a big play too, even though Warner threw it across his body. Georgia got the ball back. Dwight Phillips gets his first Georgia touchdown, as he's one of the many talented freshmen to get on the field. He scored, and it ended up being really a ball game after that point. So after all of that, kind of just want to break this down now by team. I'll start with Georgia because they won. It's in the talk of town. It's the Carson Beck issue. He now has 8 picks in his last 3 games. It's now 11 on the season. It's unacceptable by any stretch of the means. He has completely neutralized his draft stock if we're looking in the future. I mean, he came into this season as potentially the number 1 overall pick in the draft, as QB1 on the board, and he has now fallen, I'd say he's fallen out of the 1st round, possibly out of the 2nd round. He's probably looking now like a 3rd or 4th rounder at this point. Like, this is really hurting him in the draft world. I mean, it's to me, it feels like, and I said this a couple weeks ago, like, it feels like he's putting way too much pressure on himself. But whether it be all the outside factors, whether it be the NIL, personal life, whether it be just, you hear all this preseason hype and you just think that you got to be the Superman, and you don't really need to be. You just need to take what they're giving you. He's not doing that, and he's just making decisions that we didn't see him make last year. This is a guy that had, I believe, 6 interceptions on the whole season last year. Never had a multi-interception game. He now becomes the first SEC quarterback to win multiple games when throwing 3+ interception games in the SEC. Back-to-back weeks, he's thrown for three interceptions, and they won the game. It's not sustainable by any stretch of the means, and it's got to get fixed. I mean, the first interception he threw, I don't know where in the hell he was looking. He tried to get it to London Humphreys, who was on the sideline right there on the boundary, and he wasn't open, and he didn't see the defender kind of just almost baiting him as looked like he was up front, and he just backed up to make the play. It was a throw that needed to be thrown away. I was watching it. I had where I am, obviously where the video is. You can see here. Look, I'm going to play this video. All right. So, look, if you can see here, I don't know, wherever. See, if I had a pointer, that'd be sweet. See if we can get a pointer on here. I don't think I can. Anyway, if you can just kind of see on that sideline right here, left side, and you can kind of just get an idea, like, if there's nobody open on this side, left side along the sideline, and you're scrambling that way, wouldn't the most obvious thing be to just throw it away? You would think that, right? And that's just what I mean, from my perspective, that's what I'm looking at. The offense is going that way. I'm like, just throw it away, and he does it, and it becomes a terrible pick, which set up the touchdown. And then the next pick, again, he's just not seeing guys. They're dropping back into zone, it feels like, and he's just not seeing the guys that are underneath waiting for him to bait him. Beck loves to throw the ball up the seams. He just loves to do it, and which is nice to see because as a Steelers fan, you don't see it very often. They love pushing the boundaries. So you see quarterbacks throwing up the middle, which is awesome. Well, when they're baiting you to throw that there and you're still trying to thread the needle, it's not sustainable. You can't do that. You just have to know, hey, it's not there. I'm going to find a guy. Maybe if I'm going to find my running back or tight end that's just kind of waiting over here in the emergency safety spot that I know I can dump off for a few yards. Live to fight another day. That needs to be his mantra now going forward. Live to fight another day. Do not force the football. It's too bad. I mean, he is holding this team back. This game had no business being this close. Georgia outgained them in every major statistic in this football game. They had over 500 total yards of offense. They had over 300 yards passing. They had over 140 yards rushing the football. No excuse why this game was this close. It's because of the multiple turnovers. He almost threw a fourth turnover before the Pyburn one, which went right through the hands of George Gums. That could have been another killer. And again, that was up the middle trying to force something that wasn't there. It is not sustainable. Now, I also came up with this weird theory of mine that Georgia is throwing the ball on average 5 to this point. So last year they threw a ball about 32 times a game. This year they're throwing the ball right now. They're throwing it 37 times a game on average. In the last 3 games, keep in mind he has 8 interceptions the last 3 games. Last 3 games they have 43 passing attempts. Maybe it's just law of averages saying, like, listen, if you're going to throw the ball 43 times a game, he threw the ball 40 times on Saturday. They're averaging 43 attempts over the 3 games. Maybe you're just more susceptible. The law of averages would just say that, hey, you're just more susceptible to interceptions. That's just what happens when you throw the ball. I just think it could be a mix of that, but I think it's more just a mix of he's putting way too much pressure on himself. He may not say it. He says all the right things in the presser. He knows better. He's owning up to it, which you love to see from a guy. He wants to do everything he can to help this team win ball games. But the best thing he can do, because he's too talented to be doing this, is just to be throwing balls into coverages and to spots that aren't there. If there's nobody there, don't throw it. Don't force it. I would rather him take a sack and then him just toss one up and just hopefully they drop it, because these windows aren't even there. And he's continuously trying to force it when it's not there. And if he does it this weekend against Ole Miss, this isn't an offense that's gonna let you off the hook. No, this is like that would be similar to the Bama game. You know, you can't be just throwing the ball willy-nilly and hoping that, you just hope your defense bails you out. Now, I will say it's obviously the responsibility is going to fall back on the quarterback. But when your receivers aren't helping you, there was a 3rd and 2 of the 4th quarter, one of the 3 and outs that Florida forced. Georgia runs the ball twice. And I said they need to run the ball again. They don't. Beck makes a check at the line. I believe it's Dominic. So Dominic Lovett and Dylan Bell are on the left side. Dylan Bell goes to block. Dominic Lovett is supposed to kind of just go bubble screen out to the left, for a quick screen because they're blitzing. Instead, he goes slant, and Beck just throws it where he's supposed to be, throws it away. He's not there, obviously. Like, these are mistakes and communication errors that cannot be happening. This is not a guy that's in his first year in this system. This is the same system they ran last year. He needs to know better. Dominic Lovett had a good game, too. Had the touchdown, led the team in catches. He has to play better. Has to know better. The communication's got to get better. Receiver drops are still an issue. I can tally off a few off the top of my head. I thought you had a good game from the tight ends. I thought the running backs played really well. But the communication and the drops and the poor decision from the quarterback spot, it's still a massive issue. It needs to get fixed, and it needs to get fixed right away. This 2-game stretch they have coming up with Ole Miss and Tennessee will define their season. They will either pass it with flying colors and go on to Atlanta and play for the SEC title game, or they're going to fight for their life against some prime defenses and some high-flying offenses, and they're not going to win. I hope that we see the first option where they figure it out and they get rolling. It's not that difficult. I mean, obviously it's easier to say. It's easier to say than actually be done, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not like this isn't rocket science here. He's playing good football. He has a really good high completion percentage. He's like a 66 completion percentage passer. But the turnovers have got to get cut down. I'm always okay with, like, you throw one up, deep shot, defender makes a great play on the ball. That is what it is. But when we're just throwing it right to him, and all he has to do is put hthat's not no go. So it's got to get cleaned up. Hopefully it gets cleaned up. We'll see going into Saturday. Final thing with Georgia, I thought the defense played really well again, like I said, but the running game was really good. Still think they can run the ball better, or run the ball more. Again, running the football more will help solve this. Nate Frazier did a really good job stepping into this game because Trevor Etienne went down with a bruised rib injury, I think it was. Kirby Smart said in his presser today that he should be good to roll as long as it's a pain tolerance at this point, but he should be fine for Saturday. But listen, Nate Frazier stepped up big time. He had the touchdown, but he had 19 carries, 82 yards. And they were able to have success late in that game running the football, which is why I was a little more upset why they got away from it. And when they should have just been running the football more. But as far as Florida goes, before we move on here, like I said, I think the defense played really well. They forced 3 turnovers. They got a couple sacks. They were physical when they kept them in the game. And there was a big reason why this was even a ball game still late in the game. And credit to them. I think this is a group that has played phenomenally since the bye week. They continue to get better. They continue to play hard for their coach, who's just living on the hot seat. But listen, there's no quit from Florida, which is really nice to see. And now you can't. It's just you're going to keep playing these tougher offenses. So we'll just kind of see how they continue to respond. Offensively, it's tough without Lagway because they only had 119 total yards of offense after he left. But I still don't even think it would have made a giant difference. But they ran the ball really well with Jacoby Jackson. He had 12 carries. Jaden Ball had a nice game with 17 carries. Both had 74 yards for Jackson, 64 for Ball. I still don't think, even with the Lagway injury, I don't think they would have won the game because Lagway was playing all right, but he was 2 of 6 for 47 yards, 33% completion percentage. He had the touchdown based off of broken coverage, and it was off a turnover, which set him up in good field position. They had 3 first downs while he was playing, and the 25 minutes he was playing, they only had 3 first downs. I don't understand this notion that they were going to win the game. Momentum, yes, was on their side. And yes, things were kind of rolling. But to just say that they were going to win the game and just to say it almost doesn't count now in a sense, do we not understand that injuries are a thing? And do we not understand that Georgia outgained them in every major category? Outgained them in first downs. Outgained them total yards. Passing. Rushing, time of possession. It was all Georgia. And if it wasn't for the turnovers, like I've been ranting about for the last 15 minutes, this is not even a close of a game. So even with the turnovers, like Georgia was rolling offensively. The 2 turnovers happened in Florida territory. So again, to say that it was Lagway's team, Lagway isn't playing defense. Lagway's not, he's not playing defense. He's not giving up the big-time drives, the big-time touchdowns that Georgia went on in the second half. Sorry. I still think that Florida, it might have been a closer game. I mean, it was already a close game. Is it maybe a different outcome? Sure. But I never thought that Georgia was going to lose the game regardless of who was playing quarterback. So to just say, I don't know. They just say that they would have won the game. People are saying that. It's not. Don't buy into it. Do not buy into the notion that Lagway would have somehow, maybe they do win it, and maybe that is, because they were up, they had momentum going, Billy Napier was calling a good game, but to say that just because he went 2 of 6 for 47 yards, but he had a big touchdown, to say that they were going to win the game is outlandish. Outlandish. Just say, no. You lost the game, womp womp, move on. That's all I'm going to say. All right, we're going to move on because too much to talk about. Not enough ranting. All right. Another sip from the chocolate milk. Oh, I love. Shout out Publix chocolate milk. Shout out Publix chocolate milk. best chocolate milk. Come at me with that one. South Carolina, speaking of coming out, people, immunity, takes care of number 10 Texas A&M 44-20. The Gamecocks do it again, playing November spoiler. They did it a few years ago with Tennessee. They did it on Saturday night as the Aggies came rolling in off a big time win with LSU the week prior. But now they go to a place that had given them fits before, and it did again on Saturday night. USC South Carolina got off to a 14-0 lead early, ended up going up 17-6. But then A&M kind of quietly endured the early storm, and just kind of fought back into it. Ended up taking the lead 20-17. South Carolina did a good job responding going into the half tied at 20. And then after that, it was all Gamecocks. They outscored Texas A&M 24-0. They ran the ball amazing. I was a big thing I was trying to ask about this game in the preview. Two things. Mainly, would they be able to protect Lenore Sellers, and would they be able to run the football more? Which team would be able to run the ball better, and which offensive line was going to hold up? Because both these defensive fronts are really good, but South Carolina is terrible at pass pro going into the game. And so I was worried that A&M was going to be able to have a field day. But listen, South Carolina had 286 total yards on the ground. Rocket Sanders, 20 carries, 144 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had a massive 52-yard touchdown run. That was his highlight play. And Lenore Sellers had 15 carries for 106 yards and a touchdown. They averaged 7 yards a carry, both of them did. And Lenore Sellers also had 13 completions for 244 yards and 2 touchdowns. And regarding the offensive line for South Carolina, played phenomenally. 0 sacks allowed. 0 sacks. They came in ranked, I believe it was 132nd in sacks allowed. So to play a game like that, rushing and run blocking and pass pro, outstanding. Outstanding job by that front. Because that's not a slack. That's not some chump defensive line. You have guys like Shamar Turner, Shamar Stewart, Nick Scorton, DJ Regis, that's DJ Hicks, Albert Regis, excuse me. So like these guys, that's not just some slouch group. Like those are some big boys over there that took care of an LSU offensive line that it was one of the best in the country. So to do that, outstanding. And defensively shut down Marcel Reed. That was a big thing too. I think they needed to have a spy on him, whether it be Demetrius Knight, Debo Williams, and let me try to pronounce his name because I know I'm going to botch it. I find it real quick here. Oh, here we go. Nick Emenwari. I thought one of those 3 guys was going to have to do it. It really was Demetrius Knight, who played the best out of 3 of them statistically. Thought he was also one of the main contributors in stopping Marcel Reed. But listen, the defense had 3 sacks. They forced a few turnovers. Tonka Hemingway. I can't speak tonight. He had a big sack and a strip. Love Tonka Hemingway. What a defensive line name. Outstanding. And Marcel Reed only had 18 completions for 206 yards, 1 touchdown. He had the terrible pick 6. And I think the biggest thing, his legs were kept in check. Talking about the spy, 16 carries, only 46 yards. How big of an issue was that for LSU to try to stop? How big of an issue was that for Florida to try to stop? Now, the main outlier in that was that he was almost like a surprise to either starter, or they weren't suspecting him to start or come into the game at all. And he did. South Carolina did have a whole week to prep. There really was never an official announcement, but you kind of had a feeling. So I think they better prepared for him. But the issue for A&M was that just could not tackle anybody that was in a black uniform that night. South Carolina did whatever they wanted offensively, but it really was a main contributor the main contributor to that was because A&M couldn't tackle. They had 25 missed tackles, according to PFF. 25 missed tackles. That is unacceptable. It can't happen. You can't win football games in the SEC or against anybody. When you have 25 missed tackles, you're going to get beat every time. And then again, like they couldn't get pressure on Sellers. And when they did, they couldn't get home or finish it. There was one play early in the game. Scooby Williams got walked into the backfield, and then Lenore Sellers just shrugged him off, made a nice play down the field. And then, like, the offensive struggles in the second half, getting shut out just can't happen. Mainly it was because their offensive line played poorly all night long, and those boys up front, whether it be Stewart, Kyle Kennard, Tonka Hemingway, Demetrius Knight, Debo Williams. Like, Debo Williams had a really good game. Evan Worry had a nice game. Like, these guys were swarming all night long. And unfortunately, Le'Veon Moss got hurt in this game. It really kind of started to become like the downhill slope for A&M offensively after he went down. And unfortunately, it is serious enough where he's going to be out for the rest of the year. So prayers up to him. Hopefully he's able to recover and get back on the field as soon as possible. But it's tough because he's probably your best playmaker. Amari Daniels is a really good running back. He had a really big touchdown run, but you're just missing that key element Le'Veon Moss has that not many other running backs in the SEC carry. So we'll see how they are able to bounce back after that. Everything is still out in front of them for A&M. You have Auburn, you have New Mexico State, and then who else do you have? Let me see. I'm gonna look up. They have Texas, obviously, at the end, but I think there's one team that's kind of thrown in the middle of everything. Nope, they just have the 3 games. They're right. So it's New Mexico State, Auburn, and then Texas. So again, the schedule is very suitable. 2 of the 3 games are at home. You still have to go to Auburn, but Auburn's been terrible this year. I would expect them to take care of business there. So again, they need to kind of throw this one to the wayside and just kind of focus at the task at hand. There's still the goals of that was their first conference loss, so they are still right there in the race to get to Atlanta and stay in the playoff on. But they got to finish strong here. If you're South Carolina, you're looking at the season, looking at now like, hey, we should be 7-1 at this point. Like we should be. We're our quarterback going down in the first half and officiating taking the game out of our hands and costing us that win against LSU. And then you're looking at the Alabama game where you're like, hey, we are only a few plays away from beating Alabama in Tuscaloosa. We had that game we had the lead and had the game in hand, and we let it slip through our fingers. And now you look at this game, you're able to take care of business finally. And really outside of the Ole Miss game, like they have played every team either taking care of business or they've taken them down to the wire and just couldn't finish. But listen, this is for the AP not to rank them is a little surprising because I think this is a top 25 type team. So the only way to keep proving it, or only way to get ranked is to keep proving the haters wrong and continue to win. So really great win for Shane Beamer and the squad. And I picked A&M to win this game mainly because I just was worried about the pass protection. And I just thought Marcel Reed is a better quarterback. Had been playing better than Lenore Sellers has. But I also had this gut feeling that South Carolina was going to be able to take care of business here and pull off a big-time win, and that's what ended up happening. So, but a great win for South Carolina. I think if you're A&M, you just got to have to flush this one down the drain and move on because I think it was just bound to happen. One of these just kind of back to down to earth type games was just bound to happen, and that's just what happened Saturday. So, all right, we're moving on down to the ACC here. We have Louisville stunning Clemson. Excuse me. Number 11 Clemson goes down at home, 33-21. Do not let the score indicate or make you believe that this was a closer game. This was not a close game at all. A couple of junk time touchdowns ended up cutting the lead to what it is. Louisville controlled this game from the jump. It was all Cardinals. Louisville entered the game 0-8 all time against Clemson. They were able to get their first ever win against the Tigers, and to do it in Death Valley, or the so-called Death Valley, makes it even more sweeter. Louisville was able to suffocate Clemson defensively, held them to just 228 passing yards. This was a passing offense that was flying. But I was worried that Clemson had not faced anybody that was like with like all due respect to all the other opponents they played, like anybody that was worth a damn, like App State, Florida State, Virginia, NC State, like these aren't anything special. So Louisville has 3 losses this season, all by 1 possession to Miami, SMU, and Notre Dame. So this was going to be their biggest challenge going into this game outside of the Georgia beatdown. And again, they just got worked. It worked, and they couldn't do anything offensively. Louisville had 2 sacks. They held them to 21 points, and that was mainly because Phil Maffa was able to just kind of keep on rolling on the ground. The special teams miscues were just on another level for Clemson. They had 2 blocked field goals, and they did not go. So they chose to kick an extra point down 26-13 in the 4th, but they should have gone for 2 to cut it to 11. They ended up just kicking the field goal to only go down 12. That doesn't make sense because you still needed a field goal. You needed to bring the field goal into the equation, and just kicking the extra point doesn't do that. And they were going on these long, just time-consuming drives when they were trailing by multiple scores. It's like, what are we doing if you're Clemson? And this kind of game was just something that you cannot happen if you're Clemson. I mean, you let Louisville capitalize on every mistake. They were able to run the ball at will whenever they wanted to. Isaac Brown had a career night. He had 20 carries for 151 yards and a touchdown. And shifting back now to Clemson here, like this was a game that you cannot lose if you're Clemson. You just cannot lose. Like this, your program, and all due respect to Louisville, like Clemson should be a tier ahead of Louisville all the time. And just now watch and see that they're now just not even holding up par against Louisville and getting beat down at home. Fans are throwing trash on the field. And it's just, I think you're starting to see now the teacup, the kettle is you're starting to see the steam start to poke through. And that can mean a lot of things. I just think it means that trouble is brewing in Clemson, South Carolina, and it's not looking good. I mean, this is a program-defining loss, in my opinion. It's a kind of loss that can kind of just really derail a season, and it stinks because Clemson had been rolling to this point, but they hadn't really been challenged. So to see them kind of just get beat down like that at home, it's just gross to see. And it puts Clemson's playoff chances on life support. I mean, they are virtually done because they really don't play anybody again the rest of the season. They moved to 3rd in the ACC conference title race in the standing position wise. So it's SMU that moves up. I know Clemson has Virginia Tech next week. They still have to play Pitt and South Carolina, but I just don't think there's anything on the resume that'll help boost them to where they need to be. So they're going to need a lot of help. They're going to need a loss or 2 to bounce back into that ACC title picture. But for now, they are running on life support, and it's not looking good. So, but listen, shift now back to Louisville before we move on. Like, great win. Tyler Shock had a really nice game. And Isaac Brown, really great game. And good to see Louisville get a win like that after you've just seen tough loss after tough loss this season. To go in and get a massive win on the road. This was their third. I think this was their 3rd road game in 4. 3 out of their last 4 games have been on the road, and so to do that, big time, huge win. All right, moving on to around the country. So this is the time where we're going to get in the plane. We're going to fly around and see all the other biggest games of the weekend that weren't specifically headliners, but they also need to be talked about. Has the water bottle. I think you can guess what's in there. It's water. So we're going to start. How about Tulane? Shout out. We're a group of 5. We give group of 5 teams for their credit when their credit's due. So I'm going to check here. What do we got going on here? I'm getting text that the NFL is scripted. Let's see what's going on here. Ooh, Chiefs won in overtime. Hate to see it. Anyway, Tulane beats Charlotte 34-3. And I know not many of you are paying attention to the American Conference title race, but hey, Tulane stays unbeaten in conference play. They jumped Navy because Navy lost to Rice this weekend. So right now, Army and Tulane would be playing in the conference title game. Boise State beat San Diego State. Ashton Denty, if we're keeping track of his weekly stats, he had 31 carries for 149 yards and 2 touchdowns. Started off slow, but obviously got it rolling. And when he gets it rolling, it's hard to stop. UConn beats Georgia State to get to bowl eligibility, 34-27, 34-20 to 27. So great job by Jim Mora has done a great job, and UConn just digging that program out of the grave. They were left for dead. They were buried. They had already done the funeral service, just left there to rot for eternity. And he's able to dig them up out of the ground, revive them, and get them going. It has been remarkable to see. It's really good to see when teams like that are able to rebound. You've seen with like Indiana, Vanderbilt, UConn. It's good to see teams like that who are historically been terrible get back into just relevancy a little bit. Even when it's not like on national title, you're not in the national title race, but like to get to a bowl game like that, Colorado's another one. To get to where just to get to bowl eligibility, just to have that 6th win under your belt, and now you get to play an extra football game at the end of the year. That's big for those type of programs. And a really good win right there, and congrats to UConn. Number 1, Oregon, businesslike in Ann Arbor, takes care of Michigan 38-17. Jordan James outrushed Michigan as a whole. Dan and Lanning outsmarted Sharon Moore on multiple occasions. Well, there was a 4th and 4 on a punt. They did this funky little formation to get Michigan to line up over the center, which is a penalty. A really smart move there. Again, ended up giving Oregon a first down. And Michigan loses for the first time since 2020, loses multiple home games. So it just is what it is. And Michigan actually played probably one of their better games of the year. But, I mean, you're running into a buzzsaw like that. And Oregon becomes the first team since Michigan State in 2015 to beat Michigan and Ohio State in the same season. So congrats to the Ducks there. They keep on rolling. Number 5, Miami outlast Duke 53-31. Just terrible. As someone that had Duke to cover this game, Duke led. Oh, excuse me. Duke led this game by 11 in the 3rd quarter. It was 28-17. The Blue Devils were rolling. And then all of a sudden, Miami just like, we're done playing with our food. They ended up covering in this game. They scored, I don't even know the math. They ended up scoring 53 in the game. They were losing in the 3rd quarter. They were down 11. They ended up coming back and covering the 20.5-point line. Remarkable. Cam Ward, another 400-yard game. 25-41, 400 yards, 5 touchdowns. I think the more impressive part is he's doing all this without turning the football over too, which is what Carson Beck would hope he'd be doing. So to see him doing that, really impressive. And congrats to Miami there. Number 7, Tennessee pulls ahead late to beat Kentucky. I put UK and I misread that. 28-18. The officiating in this game was not very good. There was a lot of missed calls. But listen, Tennessee continues to struggle in the first half, but they're able to do enough in the second half to where they're taking care of business and get a big one on the road or at home, excuse me. Trying to think who they play next week. Can't remember, but I do know that they go to Georgia in 2 weeks or next week, excuse me. And that is a Saturday night in Athens game at 7:30. So they better be ready for that one. Texas Tech goes to Ames and takes out number 11 Iowa State 23-22. Taj Brooks scores a touchdown with 20 seconds left in the game to end up being the difference maker. Texas Tech's snaps Iowa State's hopes of a perfect season and gets a giant win after falling short the week prior to TCU. They get a massive win on the road and keeps the Big 12 race as interesting as ever. Colorado, a huge winner this weekend as they had a bye week, but Iowa State lost. Kansas State lost. We're going to talk about them in a second. So they kind of just keep on hanging around. They needed some help in front of them, and they got it right there. Indiana, number 13, Indiana. The Fighting Sigs, Kurt Cignetti, they stay unbeaten. They move to 9-0. They smoke Michigan State 47-10. And what's even crazier is that they trailed in this game 10-0. So I'm going to let you do the math there. You're down 10-0, won 47-10. What does that mean? Well, it means that they outscored Michigan State 47-0 the remainder of the game. So, and they got Curtis Rourke back, who played really well. And speaking of Kansas State, they fall to Houston as a double-digit favorite. They fall on the road, 24-19. Listen, credit to Willie Fritz and Houston to getting another big win. They got a nice win earlier this year, forgetting against who, though. But listen, you go into the game as a two touchdown underdog. Why not? Why not pull out a big win? That's exactly what the Big 12 is all about, and showed on Saturday. Number 20 SMU. We talked about this, one of the headliner games this weekend. Number 20 SMU smokes Pitt. 48-25. This game was never close. Jennings had a massive game, and they were able to force turnovers. They forced 2 turnovers, SMU did, and it really was the difference maker because SMU had all the right answers, and they stay unbeaten in conference play. They move up in that second spot, so congrats there. Number 19, Ole Miss crushes Arkansas at Arkansas, 63-31. Jackson Dart threw for 515 yards and 6 touchdowns. Ole Miss had 694 yards total offense. And then defensively, they forced 8 sacks. They have 18 sacks in 2 weeks. So it's pretty good, right? It's pretty good. And now you get the biggest game of the year for Ole Miss. You're fighting for your playoff life. You have to win on Saturday. And so now you get a Georgia team that has a lot of questions still to be answered. It's obviously a better team than what you've seen with Arkansas or with who they played the week prior, Oklahoma. So you all due respect to Arkansas and Oklahoma, and I still think Arkansas is a pretty good team. But this has been one of the better teams you've played probably since LSU. And you get them at home, which is a great thing. You got your ass beat by them last year. How much of this do we see any response? Do we see a revenge type game? Or is Georgia able to go in there and take care of business? We'll talk about that in the preview coming up this week. It's a massive game because Ole Miss has to show up and has to win the game if they want to keep their season alive. Their aspirations are for national championship. This is a team built to win a national title game. Sitting there now with 2 losses, you have to win this type of game. You get them at home. You have them kind of in right where you have them coming in, wounded almost, just searching, a lot of soul searching going on. And here you come in, putting up 700 total yards of offense, looking like nothing could stop you. We're going to see. We're going to find out on Saturday afternoon at 3:30. How about Army? 21st ranked Army stays unbeaten, beating Air Force 20-3. We had Army in the points. Unfortunately, Bryson Daly did not play in this game. He was ruled out right before kickoff with an illness, but Army was able to still take care of business. They weren't able to obviously cover the line, but they stay unbeaten. They moved up, I think, to 19th this week in the AP. And listen, here we go. Black Knights. Black Knights keep on rolling. And what does Navy do? They keep on losing. They lost to Rice this week. So Minnesota stays winning as well. They beat Illinois, 24th ranked Illinois, 25-17. That is 4 wins in a row for PJ Fleck and the Golden Gophers. They just keep on going here. It's nice to see Minnesota kind of getting some momentum rolling here. Syracuse bounced back nicely, beats Virginia Tech 38-31. Kyle McCord does not throw an interception in this game. He threw 5 last week. So good to see him have a nice bounce back game right there. Vanderbilt. I loved Vanderbilt in this game. I had them on the best bet line. Vanderbilt beats Auburn 17-7. Diego Pavia owns the state of Alabama, and he moves to 3-0 versus Hugh Freeze. So congrats to Vanderbilt there. They moved to bowl eligibility. That is the first time that the Commodores are heading bowling since 2018. So congrats there. They snap a near, 6-year streak. So good to see Vanderbilt heading back into the bowl season. Nebraska did not punch their ticket to bowl eligibility. I thought this was the best chance they would have for the remainder of the year, and they took an ugly loss at home against UCLA. Unacceptable. Dylan Raiola did not play good again. He failed to reach 200 yards passing, and UCLA comes in and gets a massive win, 27-20. Just gross. Can't have it. And here we are, Nebraska again. They did it last year. They came, I think they were 5-3, similar spot. And they did not get the bowl eligibility. And here we are. They have Iowa, Wisconsin, and let's see who's their remaining schedule. It's not the easiest in the world, especially if you're Nebraska. Here we go. Let's see. They have USC, Wisconsin, and Iowa. So we're going to find out if they can get there. Maybe USC, but I don't know. If the quarterback play is going to continue to be poor, they're not winning any of those games. UNC smokes FSU 35-11. Knowles moved to 1-8. That's all I'm going to say there. Arizona State beats Oklahoma State 42-21. How about Arizona State? Kenny Dillingham's been one of the better coaches this year. Cam Scatterbo has been one of the better running backs this season, especially the second half of the season. And Oklahoma State moves to 0-6 in conference play. One of the preseason favorites. They were my preseason pick to win the Big 12. They're 0-6 right now in conference play. I already talked about Navy, lost 24-10. Iowa smokes Wisconsin 42-10. And Washington beats USC 26-21. It was not a Pac-12 game. That was a Big Ten game. And USC moves to 4-5 on the year. Who would have thought? Speaking of who would have thought, I would have never thought that I'd go this right here this week on Best Bets Recap. 1-3-1. It's an ugly result, but we might have some excuses. Now, we're not an excuse type podcast. We own up to whenever we have poor picks. But listen, we just had a couple bad breaks because multiple missed field goals in the Clemson-Louisville game. Army had their starting quarterback out. I didn't know. And Tennessee just played poorly again. However, we want to thank Georgia and Florida for hitting the over. And we want to thank TCU for pushing. And good news is, 27-16-1 still in the year. So we are well above 500. I mean, we're looking to bounce back this week. I'm going to have all the best bets ready to roll, locked and loaded on Thursday's show. So make sure you guys stick with me. Stay on the ship. Don't abort yet. This was our first losing week in about 5 weeks. 5 to 6 weeks. I got to go back and do the math here. But we had been rolling. So this was our first bad week. So don't abort yet. Stay. Remember, we're humbled. We know that this could end abruptly at any moment. But we're looking to bounce back. We're going to have a bounce back week. Count on it. And speaking of counting on it, I can count on this podcast being about over right now, as that was all for Week 10 recap. I want to thank everyone for watching. Make sure you guys are subscribing to the podcast, as we are on the race to 200 subscribers. We can only do that, though, if we get each and every one of you to subscribe and tell anybody that is a big college football fan to subscribe as well. So that's the only way we can grow the channel. So make sure you guys like, share, and comment on the video. And I will see you guys next time for Week 11 preview. So enjoy this, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one.